I would like to pray for you.
I will come later, sir. I'm late for class.
Please, come in. Make yourself comfortable.
The day Reverend David stepped into St. Agnes Girls Secondary School, everything changed. He wore a simple white shirt, black trousers, and always carried a small black Bible under his arm. He spoke gently, with a kind smile that made even the toughest girls soften. The students loved him. The teachers respected him. Even the principal said, "We are lucky to have Reverend David posted to our school." Every morning, Reverend David led the school in prayers. He had a way of speaking that made your heart quiet down. He would say things like, "God sees you. Even when others don't. God sees your tears." And somehow, girls in the assembly ground would start wiping their eyes. Even the security women would nod slowly. When Reverend David walked past the hostels in the evenings, girls would wave from the windows. "Good evening, sir," they would shout. He would smile and reply, "God bless you, my daughters." He was the school's chaplain, but he was also a counselor. Whenever girls had problems, heartbreak, sickness, fear of exams, they went to talk to Reverend David. His small office beside the chapel became a quiet corner where many tears were wiped away. One of the senior girls, Miriam, said after he helped her with a problem at home, "Reverend David is more of a father than my own father." Some girls started calling him Daddy Rev. But then, the whispers began. It started with Favor, an SS2 girl who hardly talked in class. People said she had attitude. Some teachers said she was too fast for her age. But one evening, Favor didn't return from Reverend David's office with the same happy face others usually had. She looked quiet. Her eyes were red. When her roommate asked her what happened, Favor whispered, "I don't want to talk about it." The next day, Favor refused to go for chapel service. She sat under the mango tree, staring at nothing. That evening, she told her friend, "He touched me." The friend gasped. "Who?" Favor looked around. "Reverend David." The friend shouted, "Don't lie." Favor said nothing more. She didn't try to explain. People started to talk. But no one really listened. Soon, another girl, Benita, came forward. Benita had once been caught sneaking a phone into the hostel. She had been suspended once for wearing makeup. So when she said, "Reverend David did the same thing to me," people rolled their eyes. "Oh, these girls again. She just wants attention. Benita. She lies like she breathes." Even the hostel mistress said, "That man prays for you girls every morning. How can you even think such a thing about him?" Reverend David himself looked so calm when the rumor reached the teachers. "I have served God with my hands clean," he said. "If anyone feels I have offended them, let them come and speak to me." He even called the two girls into his office, with the school guidance counselor present, and prayed for them. "I forgive you," he said, "even though you're trying to destroy me." The girls didn't speak again after that. Weeks passed. The school moved on, as schools do. Morning devotions continued. Students lined up for inspection. Reverend David kept preaching. "God will expose every lie," he said during one Friday assembly, his voice sharp like a blade. "Wolves in sheep's clothing are not always the adults. Sometimes, they are children pretending to be innocent." Some students clapped. Some stared at the two girls sitting quietly in the last row, Favor and Benita. Benita never clapped during his sermons anymore. Favor never even looked up. Then came Jumok. Jumok was not like the other girls. She was quiet, smart, always on the honor roll. Head girl of SS3. Her father was a pastor. Her mother was a nurse. Everyone expected Jumok to become something great. So when she suddenly refused to lead morning devotion one Thursday morning, the principal was surprised. Are you sick? No, Ma. Then what is it? Jumok kept her eyes on the floor. I don't want to go near Reverend David again. That silence was louder than a scream. The news didn't break like glass. It spread like fire on dry grass. Quiet. Fast. Dangerous. Not Jumok too. The girl everyone respected. The principal called her to the office. Teachers surrounded her. The school nurse. The counselor. Even the chaplain, Reverend David, stood in the room with folded arms. Tell us clearly what happened, the principal said. Jumok swallowed hard. He touched my thigh during Bible study. The room went quiet. No, Reverend David said, shaking his head. This is an attack from hell. Jumok's hands were trembling. I didn't want to say anything. I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was an accident. But then, he did it again 2 weeks later. When I shifted my chair, he laughed and said I was too sensitive. Reverend David's eyes filled with tears. This is wickedness. My own daughter in Christ, turning against me. The teachers looked at one another. The room suddenly didn't feel as sure as before. Is it true? The guidance counselor asked gently. Have you told anyone else? Jumok nodded. I told Favor. Last month. Gasps. People turned to look at Favor, who had been standing by the door. I thought she wouldn't believe me, Favor said, her voice barely above a whisper. Because no one believed me either. Reverend David dropped his Bible. He covered his face. Jesus. But something had cracked in the room. Not just words. Trust. The principal sat back slowly, like her body suddenly weighed more. 3 girls. 3 stories. All different, but with something the same. Still, some teachers shook their heads. This is a spiritual attack. This is how Satan tries to bring down great men of God. But others began to think differently. The school called a meeting with the parents' forum. A special investigation panel was set up. Reverend David was asked to step aside while the truth was being looked into. But even then, some teachers said, this is a witch hunt. That man is innocent. And in the hostel, the students began to whisper again. Do you think it's true? I don't know. But Jumok wouldn't lie. Maybe Favor was right from the beginning. In the darkness of the hostel that night, girls lay awake, thinking about moments they had brushed off. A long hug that lasted too long. A hand that rested on their lower back when no one was looking. A joke that didn't feel funny. But no one had spoken. Because who would believe them? Not when the person was wearing a collar. Not when he prayed for them. Not when he was a man of God. By the next week, the school no longer felt the same. The chapel doors stayed locked. The bell for morning prayers no longer rang. And Reverend David's office, once always open, now sat in silence, the curtains drawn, the chair empty. Girls would pass by and lower their voices. Some paused and stared at the door, remembering the smell of aftershave, the steady hum of the ceiling fan, the couch where they had once sat. The investigation panel arrived quietly. For adults, 2 women, 2 men, from the education board. None of them smiled. None of them wore clerical collars. They began by interviewing students. First Favor. Then Benita. Then Jumok. Then 5 more girls. Girls no one had heard from before. Girls who never spoke in assembly. Girls who had kept their pain locked up so tightly that even their closest friends didn't know. I thought I was the only one. He told me not to tell anyone. That no one would believe me. He said I was like a daughter to him. Then he started saying I was beautiful. I was too scared. I still am. The panel wrote everything down. Every word. Every tear. Every time a girl paused, stared at the floor, and said, I don't know if I can say this. In the staff room, the teachers were divided. Mrs. Ikim, the English teacher, shook her head. I knew something was off. The way he always called the girls to praise alone. But why didn't you say anything? Mr. Amos, the PE teacher, asked. Because I didn't want to be the one causing walla. Because I wasn't sure. Because I also didn't want to believe it. The home economics teacher, who had defended Reverend David from the beginning, suddenly went quiet. Later that day, she requested to speak to the panel privately. What she told them made one of the women on the panel put down her pen and stare. Back in the hostel, girls started checking in on each other. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, one girl told Benita. I really thought you were just trying to cause drama. Benita didn't reply at first. Then she said, You're not the only one. Some girls wept in the bathroom at night. Not because it happened to them, but because it could have. Because they remembered moments that suddenly made more sense now. Because they didn't know what to do with the anger rising inside them. Outside the school, word had gotten out. Parents started calling. Some came to take their daughters home for a few days. Church elders came to visit the principal. One of them told her, Please be careful. Don't allow the devil to destroy the work of God. But another said quietly after the meeting, If it is true, please protect the girls. All of them. Then came a twist no one expected. A girl who had graduated 3 years ago sent an email to the school. It was long. Carefully written. Full of pain. She said Reverend David had done it to her too. Back when she was in SS3. During her final exams. She had never told anyone. She thought she had buried it. But the news had brought everything back. She even attached screenshots of WhatsApp messages from years ago. The way he would check on her. Call her his spiritual daughter. Then one day, the messages changed. Became something else. She blocked him. But she never reported it. The panel called her in. They listened. They recorded. One of the members quietly asked, How many more are there? The school chapel was quiet now. Too quiet. The hymns had stopped. The laughter during counseling sessions no longer echoed through the hallway. Girls no longer ran to Daddy Rev when their hearts were heavy. Now, they walked past that hallway like it was haunted. Some would say it was. The investigation entered its 3rd week. A town hall-style meeting was held in the assembly hall, just students, teachers, and the panel. Reverend David was not invited. Girls sat in rows, not in their usual noisy, restless way, but stiff-backed, staring ahead like something inside them had been locked up too long. The head of the panel, a short woman with pepper-gray hair and kind eyes, stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound angry. But what she said shook the hall. We have received testimonies from 12 students, she said quietly. Some from this term. Some going back as far as 3 years. Gasps. Whispers. One of them told us something yesterday that made us cry. Not because it was the first time we heard such a story, but because it was told so quietly, so painfully, and yet, she still blamed herself. The woman paused. She said, maybe if I hadn't gone to him that evening, it wouldn't have happened. Silence. Girls lowered their heads. Teachers blinked hard. Then the woman said, Let me be clear, it is never your fault. When an adult crosses a boundary, when someone touches you in a way that makes you uncomfortable, it is not your fault. Whether you wear a long skirt or a short one. Whether you're quiet or loud. Whether you made mistakes before or not. A few girls began to cry silently. Others stared straight ahead, jaws clenched. The woman's voice trembled now. I know some of you are scared to come forward. I know some of you are asking yourselves, will they believe me? Will they say I'm spoiling a good man's name? But let me tell you the truth, a good man does not make you feel unsafe in private. A good man does not call himself your father and then behave like a stranger in the dark. Suddenly, a hand shot up from the back. It was Hannah. SS2. Small-sized. Soft voice. Always in the library. Nobody expected her to speak. I want to say something, she said. The panel leader nodded. Come forward, please. Hannah stood, legs shaking. The hall was silent as she walked to the front. She faced the crowd, then looked down at her fingers. Last year, Reverend David told me I was special, she began. He said I had spiritual favor. He invited me to pray with him after evening prep, in his office. I thought it was because I had told him I was afraid of failing chemistry. Her voice cracked. She swallowed. But then, he started saying I made him feel things. I didn't understand. I was just 15. Someone gasped in the audience. I tried to stop going. But he would send notes through junior girls. If I refused, he would stop talking to me. He said I was being stubborn. I didn't know how to tell anyone. I thought maybe I did something wrong. Tears slid down her cheeks now. I'm tired of keeping it inside. The room exploded, not with noise, but with the weight of emotions girls could no longer hold back. Some sobbed. Others walked out. A few stood and clapped gently, not to celebrate, but to show support. Even some teachers began to cry. Mrs. Akim leaned against the wall, shaking her head. We failed these girls, she whispered. The panel ended the session early. That night, the principal called an emergency staff meeting. This time, her voice was no longer calm. This is not about protecting the school's name anymore, she said, eyes flashing. This is about justice. About truth. About daughters who came to school to learn, not to be destroyed. Reverend David, meanwhile, had been summoned by the district authorities. Word had reached the Ministry of Education. The local news had picked up whispers of an abuse scandal at one of the top girls' schools in the state. And suddenly, parents who once said, "Not my child," began looking their daughters in the eye and asking, "Are you okay? Did anything ever happen?" Some girls nodded. Some broke down in their mother's arms. Some still couldn't speak. And in the middle of all this, the one question still remained. Why did it take so long before anyone believed them? The trial of Reverend David Akinwell began 6 months later. It was not held in secret. Journalists were there. Parents came. Activists and NGOs filled the courtroom. The girls were given the option to testify via video. Some chose to. Some couldn't. Some stood in that courtroom, trembling but determined, as they faced the man who once preached about purity and prayer. Jumok gave her testimony in a calm, steady voice. I didn't come here because I hate him, she said. I came because I love the girls that will come after me. I want them to be safe. I want the adults around them to believe them. Benita cried during hers. She had to be helped out midway. But before leaving, she said one thing clearly. He used to bless us with his hands. Then he started using those same hands for evil. Favor's mother sat beside her daughter in court. When asked if she had anything to say, she replied, "You all saw our daughters as wayward because they wore lip gloss and giggled too loud. But when the quiet ones started speaking, you believed. That's the sickness. Not the girls. Your bias is the sickness." The judge listened. The evidence was clear. Messages. Witnesses. Patterns of grooming that spanned years. At the end of the trial, Reverend David was found guilty on multiple counts of child sexual abuse and inappropriate conduct with minors. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He didn't cry. But many in the courtroom did. Some cried because justice had finally spoken. Some because they realized how blind they had been. Some cried for the girl they once were. The one nobody believed. Back at St. Agnes, healing was slow, but real. The school partnered with a women's foundation to train all staff on student protection and reporting abuse. A new counselor was hired. Parents were invited to attend monthly check-ins with students, not just for grades, but for emotional well-being. The end. If this story touched your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and comment your thoughts below. And if you're new here, subscribe to FolkTales Central, where true emotions meet unforgettable stories. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we bring hearts to life.